I'm a giving person. I love people. I love being I have the heart of a servant.
Yeah.
So what one thing ending 2024, I realized that I have to really put my business first and not necessarily my feelings. So I would just let stuff slide. I would let things, clients, giving people free things, all this type of thing, and kind of going against my contract just a little bit and not really sticking to it just for the sake of me wanting to help people. So one thing I had to really tighten up this year was sticking to what in that contract and making sure that my business does not suffer because I want to help somebody or I want to kind of just slide on different things. I had to realize for me, it's one thing in my personal life to be that person, but when it comes to business, I need to stick to business.
One thing we often hear about is systems, and I think certain parts of the event industry, people assume that it doesn't matter if you have a system or not. And I'm super excited about this conversation because honestly, I'm inspired by your journey that you've been going through, as well as your transparency with being able to share your journey along the way as an event venue owner. I think we need to have more of these conversations, especially because I feel like people often only share the arrival and they sometimes either gatekeep what's going on behind the scenes, not the day in, day out. And I'm really excited about this. So thank you so very much for being my guest today, Bella.
Thank you for having me. Listen, you helped me from the beginning, so I'm here if you need me. You saved my life, so thank you.
And I think that the beautiful part about it is even though this industry was something new for you, and I even want for you to share a little bit about your backstory, is that you knew from the beginning, like, hey, I need to have some things in order. Where I find that some people in this industry, that sometimes can be the last thing that they actually consider compared to it being the first thing. So I congratulate you on making that decision because I can only imagine how things would have been if you didn't have the know-how to do that ahead of time, for you to really have the great first year that you did have.
I don't even want to think about it. I knew like you said from the beginning that once I downloaded like my system that I use and was like, oh my God, this needs to be set up, I completely got overwhelmed. So the first thing I did was find someone to help me set it up. And you were the person I chose and literally took such a weight off my shoulder because starting an event space is enough. Doing the having to do the background task and everything that comes with it was just like extra. So I was like, let me try to alleviate some of this weight and find someone. So you came right on time.
And so how long have you had your space, just for someone that's new to knowing you?
Yeah, so my space officially opened October 2023. So a little over a year now.
And the cool thing about it is that even how you said alleviating the stress, because that's something that I find that when people first start out with a venue, I think it's like, oh, I found this venue. Magically, boom, it turns to a venue, and not understanding all the little big steps before you can even have someone actually host your event, like host an event in your space. Because it took how long for you to even get your occupancy?
So this I 4 months of going back and forth with the city. I didn't only need my certificate of occupancy. I also had to get a special use permit as well. So after I did the whole process of the special use permit, which took about 4 months, then I was able to apply for my certificate of occupancy. So it may not be like that in every city, but the city that I was in, they required that.
And it's good to know that, because sometimes too, even when some people have conversations with me about, hey, what would you recommend? I'm like, every state, every city has different rules and regulations. So for anyone that is watching, please don't just assume that, oh, because this person's in, let's say, Texas, but you might be in Austin. The rules are probably very different from Dallas to Austin, or have little minutia about it. Or let's just not even say in the state of Texas. You may be listening or watching this podcast and may be in Maryland. chances are the rules and regulations for Maryland, depending on what county you are in, is going to be different than the rules and regulations of the county that you're in Dallas, outside of Dallas.
Yes, I tell people before you even sign a lease at the spot, check with the city first because the owners of the property may tell you one thing, but the city, it could be a totally, completely different story. So you always, always make sure you check with the city to see if you're even able to have this type of business in that area. So please, that's if you don't hear anything else, hear that. Make sure that you're legally able to be where you want to be.
I love that. And I have a question for you. So
Yeah.
I think that you've been pretty transparent about your journey. What would be the biggest challenge that you find that you faced in your first year in business?
Oh my God. I think scaling would probably be my biggest challenge so far. Last year, so I had a complete full year in business, which was 2024, and I learned a lot in that year. So I don't necessarily felt like I should have just blew up in the year 2024 because I learned so much. And I would be afraid that if I did blow up the way that everybody wants to, I probably wouldn't have survived because I just learned a lot in that year. But now that I'm out on the other side of it, not saying that I learned every single thing about this business, but I feel a little bit more confident going into my second full year. It's scaling. It's scaling is not only just scaling, but working smarter because I've worked hard since I've opened. So now I'm trying to like reel back a little bit and trying to, work a little bit more smarter so I don't have to work as hard, if that makes sense. So that's what I'm currently going through right now. I would say when I first opened was finding clientele. So I had to go over that hump and all that type of stuff. But once I kind of got like what works for me, it's been good since.
And it's good that you allowed yourself that journey to navigate through what that looked like. I know sometimes we may see the anomalies that just have amazing success and seven-figure businesses their first year, but don't also understand the journey and the process and the lessons that we're learning. And I know that one of the things that you and I have spoken about, and I talk to of all of my clients, is like we always have to think about not just where our business is, but where we're going when we're creating systems. Because if we aren't able to think through what's working well now, and we're like, oh, I want more business. Can your business even handle a 5% increase? Can it really
Yes,
handle a 10%? But it sounds great
right.
on paper until you got to
It
execute
sounds
it.
amazing. Yes. Like, can you even handle? Because and that's another thing that I'm kind of like dealing with, and I hope that this year will be the year that I'm able to expand my team
Yes.
because I'm not quite at my wits end, but
Yes.
I can feel myself getting, especially when my personal life changes.
Yeah.
I'm going to need more help.
Mhm.
So it's just like you want this increase, but can you handle it?
Yeah.
And are you going to be able to afford to hire someone if you need to?
But that is an honest question. Like that is something that I think is very important for us as entrepreneurs to really take time to think about and look at, because often I feel that some of the information that people only share is from a revenue standpoint, not really a profit standpoint, or a gross profit standpoint after we done paid Uncle Sam. Like there's so many different factors that we have to be considerate of, because if you're going to go through this journey as an entrepreneur and you're going to do some of the sacrifices, you're going to have some of those late days and hours and may have to sacrifice some things for a moment or a season. But if you're going to do that, we also want to make sure we're building something that we love and that is worth that sacrifice that we can come back to. And it's good that you're at least now taking that time to think about it. And I think it's good to always have that review every year minimum, to just because if you just stroll right into the next year, it doesn't change unless you know what needs to change or how you're
You will
going to
have the
change.
same year over and over and over again.
Yes.
Trust, like, yeah.
And it's going to be exhausting. You already know HoneyBook can make your life easier. However, you may be in a position where you know that you're not using the automations or any of the really cool features to the fullest of its capacity. Let's be real. learning how to set up a CRM can feel challenging. So if you're tired of DIYing your CRM so that you can actually start to convert clients and feel the ease from using this platform, it's time for you to check out my done for you services so that you can get access to workflows, templates, and automations. My done for you services are intended to make your event business thrive. So let's take the headache out of the process and get started together, because you deserve to be able to focus on what you want to focus on, which is your business, which is to make money inside of your company. So are you ready to have a system that's working for you? If so, click in the description so that you can get a free consultation with me today. So since you realized that you had this weight in the beginning and you knew you needed to work with someone to help with your system, now that you're a year in and you're using not just your CRM platform, which of course, y'all, little humble plug, HoneyBook is the platform I'm using, the HoneyBook that I use also in my own event business. The thing is that you want to be able to not only look at how your CRM is working, but it's also thinking to yourself, how are you actually doing other systems inside of your business? What are some other systems have you had to look at? And I'll even say one of the ones I think you've shared, like the setup and breakdowns of your space, has also had to been something you've been considering. But what are some other things you've looked at in your flow?
Yeah, so outside of like the back end, as far as like CRM, just the whole client relationship thing, I had to like reevaluate. I'm a giving person. I love people. I love being. I have the heart of a servant. So, what one thing ending 2024, I realized that I have to really put my business first and not necessarily my feelings. So, I would just let stuff slide. I would let things, clients, giving people free things, all these type of things, and kind of going against my contract just a little bit and not really sticking to it, just for the sake of me wanting to help people. So one thing I had to really tighten up this year was sticking to what is in that contract and making sure that my business does not suffer because I want to help somebody, or I want to kind of just slide on different things. I had to realize, for me, it's one thing in my personal life to be that person, but when it comes to business, I need to stick to business. And I honestly feel that the clients will respect you more if you have a firm hand. You know what I'm saying? They will respect you more. They would just they should understand, because anywhere else, any other business they go, they won't have those. Like, say they will go to Target, they don't go in Target doing whatever they want to do. Target has a system, right? So I have to hold my business at that same standards. You mentioned it earlier, just not doing it as the present business, but operating as a future business, a business that maybe have several locations. You know what I'm saying? Who maybe is all across the country. I don't know, right? But just operating as that now. And then you mentioned clean up. So me and my husband, we clean our space ourselves. So we really had we got it on lock. First of all, like, we've been doing it since we opened. We have our system. We can literally flip a space, because sometimes we have two events in one day. So we can literally flip a space in 45 minutes. Like, our cleaning system is set. So when it's time for me to hire like a cleaning company out, we already have it to where, this is what we do. This is how we like it. This is our standard, because that's one thing. I don't play when it comes to my space looking good. So those are just some things I had to set, that I set in the beginning, and that over time I had to set, like, now. So
And then too, it's like, even with having that, and I think both are even aligned. I've recently had some conversations with some venues that I feel like sometimes, depending on our true desire of our spaces, I find that a lot of people lean into like, oh, it's okay. And I'm like, no,
yes,
you talk to me, I'd be like,
no.
no, like, make them sign that contract, make them sign that deposit. I'm like,
the they signed the contract. That's the thing.
yes.
It be me not outstanding and
That
holding
contract,
the thing.
yes. And
Yeah.
I'm always
So
like, no, because there was a venue that she's so sweet. She has an amazing place and space, and they're expanding because they're able to buy an adjoining, adjacent build, not like room or building, add on to their building. So it was really awesome. But then what happened is then there was a situation that it happened to be I was setting up her honey book, and something had happened a few days before where she says like, and if an event goes over 12 or like over midnight, then it's going into the next day. You're going to have an extra day. So she usually, because she has to shut down, she's there. But to avoid conflict and things of that nature, she didn't say anything. And then when she sent the person the bill, of course, the person pushes back. And so I had to give her some recommendations. I'm like, the thing is that if you're already there, it would have probably been best that like 30 minutes before that shutdown to actually just say, because some people aren't just watching the clock and it's not an intentional. So sometimes being able to adhere to our contracts isn't necessarily after the fact. It may be what are some of those gentle things that we can help with while things are going on. So if it is with doing walkthroughs and finding out, are you going to have candles? Are you going to have glitter? Like I saw one of your events at some point and I saw hay all over the place and I was like, ooh, I know that that probably was not a part of the plan. And
not the plan.
so
No.
I was like, that
No.
cleanup probably took forever to get all that hay out. But I think what happens is that when we're able to find not just the ways to have the contracts, but also ways to communicate it and not always expect for there to be this negative response, is however we're communicating it that can sometimes, granted, some people are just automatically abrasive, but some people are not actually that way. But if we're automatically going into that exchange expecting conflict, sometimes what happens is that um, we're coming in with a weird energy that then reflects that to that person and they respond a certain way compared to just going in confident, empathetic, but also explaining that this is what it is in a friendly way so that people understand how they broke that rule. So I'm glad that you are really taking the time to think through and stick to your guns on those things. Like I've had it and to be honest, I was like that at one point with my own event business where I had to cancel some people holiday parties and I felt bad about it. But I'm like, I never agreed to these payment terms. Like I never agreed to, because of corporate they usually have to have the main accounts payable to cut the check, then mail it, and like, but I clearly communicate when things are due. I should not now need to cause a breakdown in my life or in my vendor's life because they didn't do or they didn't rush or maybe I didn't effectively communicate. Because sometimes, let's be honest, some people just sign things to just sign things without really even paying attention to what they're signing to. So some of us having systems in our system, it may even be, and I know we did this even with some of the emails with yours, is having reminders so that we're just overly communicating, not in a new like a nuisance type of manner, but just in a way so that people understand. Like if they've gone to venues before and a person wasn't as organized as you, they may think that everything's good to go and everything is like they can do whatever they choose, but you're like, no, these are our rules, this is what we require. They're like it's something totally new to them in their world.
Right, yeah. And it's so funny that you mentioned people don't read the contract because I even had to add like a snippet in my contract about, my deposit not being non-refundable. You now have to like physically type that you type the word yes, that you understand that this deposit is not refundable. And you can't go on to pay until you check that off. So, yeah, people don't read it. So I make sure that and even at the tour, I'm telling you, like, hey, this deposit is not refundable. Your time that you book includes your setup, your event time, and your cleanup time. So you have to, like you said, over communicate because just to avoid any confusion or any headache in the end time. And I agree with you that sometimes I drop the ball sometimes, but just making sure that the client really, really does understand that, hey, these are the rules. This is what we go by. And most of them are fine. Like they're fine with it. So I don't want people to be afraid to stick to what they want for their business because most people are fine. Like any client that I had to like charge extra for, they just paid it. No worries because you know that hey, you went against what yeah. So don't give me pushback because you know what you knew what the rules were. So I get it. I get it. Yeah.
But you gave the perfect example. Like when we automatically assume like, oh my gosh, if I push back, they're gonna not do this and they're gonna go and say all these horrible things. Most people aren't. And if someone does that, that's because that's their usual MO, not because of
Yes.
your behavior. That's just
It's a
how
character
they handle
thing.
things. And that
Yeah.
has nothing to do with you. That has all to do with how they handle those types of matters.
Yes. I 100% agree. Definitely a character thing.
Yes, it's a character thing, 100%. So,
Yeah.
so for you, what is one system you wish you had implemented sooner inside of your venue?
So just like I mentioned, the whole making sure, well, adding that little snippet of making sure that they know the deposit was not refundable because I had clients who wanted to cancel and it was always in the contract, but just making sure that they understood it. You know what I'm saying? So I had a client that canceled on me because of a personal thing in her life, and she paid the deposit, and um, unfortunately, she wanted her deposit back, and I had to tell her that it's not refundable and all that type of stuff. So she filed a claim with her bank account and I lost for some reason. I sent everything in. They ended up giving her the money. No how. So just now just making sure that the client really sees that part in my contract. But yeah, that's something I wish I really reiterated from day one was that.
Yeah, I think that that's one of those things because even with myself, when certain things inside of my contract, I had to make sure that because you would think if someone's signing something that they would be reading it. And I hope people take heed to this is that if you're using some type of CRM that people are able to sign information that they're able to acknowledge important parts because some people just read through, scroll, go to the bottom and be thinking everything's good to go. Like I had someone recently, I didn't even send this person a contract. I sent them just an information welcome brochure and then reached out, hey, I just wanted to make sure our event's still booked. I'm like, our so considering that you've learned a lot of really great things in this previous year, going now into 2025, are there any processes or systems that you're going to be looking to improve going into this upcoming year and beyond?
It was definitely just making things just a little bit smoother. And like I mentioned before, I wanted to work smarter. So, one thing I found in the year 2024 was just like I get like an influx of inquiries and the percentage of those inquiries turning into actual bookings were less than 50%. So one thing that I implemented once I realized that was making sure that my initial inquiry forms is like has a more serious tone to it instead of, just fill it out if you have questions. It gave off that energy at first. So now I changed it and I tweaked it a little bit to say like, you know, you're filling out this form because you want to move forward with a booking. However, if you have questions, because a lot of people just fill out the form if they had a question, I will put my email in the inquiry form, say email such and such if you have any questions. And then again, I added a thing at the bottom that says you by submitting this form you want to move forward with your booking and I have to physically type yes. So just to kind of like help with like because they will fill out the inquiry form and then of course there's an automatic email prompting them to like either book a tour or book a call or whatever, and it would just stop there and I would be following up with people and stuff like that. Or they will even write their question on the inquiry form. And I'm like, this is not what that's there for. Like, this is only if you're ready to move forward with your booking, as in go on a tour or maybe even hop on the call or whatever. So just switching my language on my inquiry form, I feel like it's helped a little bit. I don't get a lot of like, um, I don't want to call them spam because they're real people, but like just useless or inquiries that don't have people who are just fishing for information, because a lot of people don't read your website, so they'll just think that this is the next step of answering the questions, and just like, no, that's not what that's for. And then also I added more a pop-up on my website to prompt people to send me an email for questions as well. So just those small changes, I feel is working. We have to see, but
Yeah, I
so
would say
far
so
so good.
definitely monitor it. Because I think with every step we or change we make, we always want to monitor it. I think the nature of venues is that there's going to always be high inquiry because people are just shopping around. Um, and what might happen, and you won't know until you really review the data in 90 to 180 days, is it now you're just getting a whole bunch, like all those messages that were being handled at least through your automation, are you now getting those messages just in your email? So now that's bombarding you, taking away time. So it's just good to evaluate, just because again, the nature of event venues or just events in general, like if someone has this idea for an event, they're not just reaching out to one caterer, one balloon artist. They're they're multiple, and it's just what happens, and they're just trying to see who's going to give them information. You have some that are going to make those decisions based off of price, some based off of emotional connection to a space or location. Like they just have different reasons for choosing, but just compare. Like I would just say take the data, because inside a honeybook it gives you conversion rates, and conversion rates honestly are just what conversion rates are. It just tells you like, okay, this is the amount of people that actually turn into bookings. So then what it might then be is, how do I get more people into the funnel so that I get more bookings, not how do I now just get more emails? Because that can be a little bit of a tweak, but just always just check out the data on that.
Yeah, I'm going to see how it goes, and I don't know. Hopefully, those small changes will make a
Yes.
better rate for this year.
And
But
then what I would even
yeah,
say, if you know any other
just
people that are that have a venue space that's using a CRM, ask them what their conversion rate shows.
because it could be normal. I
Because
don't
what was
know,
the rate again?
but
What percentage?
I, it was
Yeah,
it
that's
was
not
like
bad at
44%
all.
of yeah,
Yeah,
it was
that's not
forty
bad
four
at all.
percent.
It's just the nature, of it. Like, and I guess that could be even a great question to pose to people. What is your conversion rate? Because I would love to have some people comment on that. And if you don't have a system that easily tells you that, then that definitely needs to change. And I'll probably make sure in the show notes to have a link to try out a trial on HoneyBook, because you just have to have that data in your business to just know what's really going on. And then also too, one of the things when it comes to processes and systems, I tell people to also think about the day to day, because like you mentioned, eventually you want to have your own like your own cleaning people that are doing stuff. So starting to even keep records of that, like an SOP, so then they can follow those practices.
I've heard someone else mention like having like standard operating, even if you don't even have anyone. You know what I'm saying? Even if you're not in the position right now to hire someone, just getting that together so you'll be ready when you are able to. So you just remind me on that. So that's something I'm going to be working on throughout, the time, because that's so important. Like, you want to make sure that at this business you're operating as a real business, first of all, and at this business, this is how we do things, this is the standard here. So that was a
Yeah, because
great
that's
great
even what the
point.
training videos I give to you. Those are also SOP videos. So it's one of those things inside on essentially on this is on the hustle free entrepreneur, but also on Green Eyed Ambition. Like I would never teach anyone how to actually do your service, But what we're going to talk about is what's going on behind the scenes of our business and what are some of the conversations that don't often happen in this space. So I would love for you to share, like, what is one desire that you have for your business going into the new year?
It's just to run a tighter ship, run a tighter ship, really get like my standard down and stick to the standard. And then another really, really big wish of mine is to hire my first employee to help in the areas where I'm not great at. Because I'm very self-aware and I know the areas where I'm great at and I know the areas where I struggle in. So just hiring someone whose strengths are my weaknesses. So that's probably the biggest goal for Swanky in 2025 is that
Okay,
right there.
sounds fantastic. Well, I'll definitely make sure to have your information in the show notes. And I just want to thank you for sharing. Like, I wanted this whole podcast to be able to just have people from different parts of the industry to just be able to hear. Like, I have different balloon artists, caterers, venues, like event planners, because often we don't have a space that we're learning about the unsexy things. We want to talk about the pretty things all the time. But what happens when the pretty is shut down? You know, when we have all these pieces of hay and now we got to figure out. So, no, I just thank you again for sharing your experience, things that you've learned. And I hope that this has been helpful and impactful for others in the entrepreneur space.
Of course, I love sharing my journey, good, bad, ugly, and I really appreciate you having me on here. This was a good talk.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome. It's my pleasure. All right. You have a good one. Okay, hon?